Trey Lance was not at practice yesterday as he was demoted to the third-string quarterback. And this story to me is so much bigger than whether or not Trey Lance is a bust. And this is where I want to start today's show. And I want to give a bit of a history on Kyle Shanahan and then the blow-by-blow of the San Francisco 49ers to explain why I personally find this story so unfathomable. So Kyle Shanahan, obviously, his dad's Mike Shanahan. He comes up with the Houston Texans. And those Houston Texans teams had a clear ceiling. He was the offensive coordinator in 2008 and 2009, right before I got to Houston, and they had a clear ceiling. Why? Because they had so much trouble getting the quarterback position right. They eventually trade for Matt Schaub, and under Schaub, they have some level of success. They're not great, but they at least get to a level of relevance. Kyle Shanahan then goes to Washington. Washington has a clear ceiling, and then they trade all those assets to go get Robert Griffin. He has a dynamic rookie season. They're a playoff team. They look like a legitimate, I don't want to say contender, but they're like, wow, this is building something special. Robert then shreds his knee, and they go back to mediocrity. And Kyle Shanahan moves on. He's in Cleveland for a year where, once again, the quarterback position is the ceiling on the team. And then he gets to Atlanta with Matt Ryan, the best quarterback he's ever had the opportunity to work with. And the Shanahan system plus Matt Ryan's not great, but a good quarterback plus the Shanahan system resulted in a MVP and a Super Bowl appearance. Now, they blew the Super Bowl, but that was where Kyle Shanahan finally, for the first time in his career, got to taste what his system with a plus quarterback could be. And it's league MVP and a Super Bowl appearance. So he then gets the job in San Francisco. Their quarterback position is an unmitigated disaster. And late in his first year, they trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. And with Jimmy Garoppolo, they have instant success. Now, the instant success is they win a bunch of games at the end of his first year. He then, unfortunately, blows out his knee in week 2 of his second year, but then he's healthy, and Jimmy Garoppolo, who is the definition of a mediocre quarterback with that Shanahan system, they go to the Super Bowl. The next year, Jimmy gets hurt again. They have a bad season. And the very next year, after Jimmy gets hurt again, and they are sitting at number 12 in the draft, they then have a decision. And the decision is, do we want to stay here at number 12 and draft a quarterback? Trey Lance could be there at 12. Justin Fields could be there at 12. Mac Jones could be there at 12. And move off of Jimmy because of the injuries. Or do we think we see a special quarterback that can allow Shanahan, for the first time since Matt Ryan in 2016, have a plus quarterback and see if this team can be a juggernaut? They make the decision to trade up because they determine, Shanahan and Lynch determine, that while this system with this roster can be good with almost anyone playing quarterback, if we have an excellent quarterback, we can be amazing. And they pay a massive premium, 3 first-round picks to move from 12 to 3. We then learned, obviously, if they wanted to stand pat with Jimmy at quarterback, they could have drafted Micah Parsons there. And if they wanted to move off Jimmy at quarterback, they could have drafted Mac Jones there. And I'm not talking about at 3, I'm talking about at 12. They target Trey Lance. And with targeting Trey Lance, and his dozen career D2 starts, they say, you're not going to play, you're not going to be our starter your rookie year. But he does get some action. He comes in a game his rookie season in week 4, plays really well against Seattle. Jimmy had gotten hurt. He had 160 yards on 18 attempts, 2 touchdowns, ran the ball well. It's like, oh, okay, maybe something's here. He then starts the next week against Arizona, plays terribly. So he has one good game coming in reserve, one bad game. Jimmy's then healthy again. Trey Lance sits his rookie season for the next 10 weeks. Then week 16, Jimmy is out. Trey Lance starts against Houston, albeit an obviously bad Houston team. Trey Lance plays really well. Couple touchdowns, 250 yards, completes 70% of his passes. Runs the ball for 30 yards. And then goes back to the bench, obviously, because Jimmy's healthy again, and they go to the NFC title game. And after that first year of seeing Trey Lance, the San Francisco 49ers, before the offseason even begins, say publicly, Jimmy is done, Trey is our guy. They then try to trade Jimmy. They can't. They bring him back on a lesser deal as the backup. They also draft Brock Purdy after passing on him 8 different times with the final pick of the 7th round. And Trey Lance plays week 1 in a torrential downpour in Chicago and plays terribly. And then in week 2, 3 plays into the game or 6 plays into the game, breaks his leg. And can't practice, obviously, or play the rest of the year. And then we get to this offseason, and Brock Purdy, understandably, they're saying it's his job. Even though they spent all those resources on Trey, Brock was undefeated in games he started and finished. They like what they have there. They're giving him the job. So be it. That is reasonable. And then in camp, they bring in Sam Darnold, who has started around 60 games, has been awful at 2 different stops, has as many touchdowns as interceptions, has a bottom 3 NFL passer rating since coming into the league. And they talk up Sam Darnold as the next Steve Young, something they really said. And yesterday, they anoint Sam Darnold the backup and basically say Trey Lance is done here. So before I get to how unprecedented that is, I want everyone to understand the decision flow. The decision flow for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch since Kyle got to San Francisco has been, we will trade significant assets to get a difference maker at the quarterback position. We will trade a 2nd-round pick and immediately give Jimmy Garoppolo and his 2 career starts the biggest contract in NFL history. We will then trade 3 first-round picks after making a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo for another quarterback. We need to have a difference maker at that position. We will then throw away with no return that player after 4 career starts, after 2 full off seasons with the team, 1 off season good enough to be named the starter, the other off season bad enough to be essentially off the roster. Throw him away not for Brock Purdy, but for Sam Darnold. And now maybe the answer is Trey Lance is simply that bad. That could be the answer. What I am trying to tell you is he would have to be worse than every first-round quarterback drafted in the last 30 years for this to be justified. Because I went through it, and I'm going to give it to you right now. the biggest busts that we think of over the last 30 years in the NFL and how much of a rope they got. Ryan Leaf started 18 games with the San Diego Chargers. Achilles Smith started 17 games with the Cincinnati Bengals. Tim Couch started 59 games with the Cleveland Browns. Joey Harrington started 2 full regular seasons and a total of 55 games with the Detroit Lions. Patrick Ramsey, remember him? He was a late first round pick. 24 starts with Washington. J.P. Lossman, a late first round pick. 33 starts with Buffalo. Jason Campbell, a mid first round pick. 52 starts with Washington. Matt Leinart, a mid first round pick. 17 starts with Arizona. Brady Quinn, a late first round pick. 12 starts with Cleveland. Tim Tebow, a late first round pick. 14 starts with Denver. Jake Locker, an early first round pick. 23 starts with Tennessee. Blaine Gabbert, a early first round pick. 27 starts with Jacksonville. Christian Ponder, 36 starts with Minnesota. E.J. Manuel, 17 starts with Buffalo. Johnny Manziel, 8 starts with Cleveland. Josh Rosen, 13 starts with Arizona. Zach Wilson, 22 starts with the Jets. There is one guy since Jim Druckenmiller who has gotten as short of a leash as Trey Lance. Paxton Lynch in Denver, who was a late first-round pick, got 4 starts, was awful across the board with nothing redeeming from any of them. Trey Lance was 3rd pick of the draft. So I am not saying that he has to start over Brock Purdy. What I am saying unequivocally is this. If you trade up to draft a D2 player who did not even play his last year of college football, see enough from him in your building as a rookie to try to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo and anoint him your starter. He then plays a game and less than a quarter and breaks his leg. And now you're ready to cut bait entirely. You don't know what you're doing. Your quarterback evaluation process is irrevocably broken. And the idea that you now have simply discovered gold in Brock Purdy, maybe you did. But as I said on television yesterday, if you drive your car 100 miles an hour off a cliff, survive the crash, and land next to buried treasure, and become wildly wealthy, you don't get credit for that. You're not a genius for that. It was an idiotic, indefensible process that you ended up somehow lucking out on. And I do not think Mr. Irrelevant coming off Tommy John surgery is going to be the player that the Niners think he can be. And I know Sam Darnold is not anyone's savior. And if you 2 years ago loved Trey Lance enough to trade up for him, and 1 year ago loved him enough to name him your starter, and today think he's worse than Sam Darnold, then you don't know what you're doing. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.